All right. Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of The Grateful Gamer. This episode is initially dedicated towards multiplayer and team play. And I had thought about this recently. First, I kind of want to get into what I want to do is get into doing a daily podcast of this. Mostly because I just love talking about video games. I'm not quite prepared to do that yet because it's hard for me to come up with topics in my own head. So I'm gonna do is I'm gonna think about it, and like this today's topic, I actually randomly came up with this morning. I can't remember how it came up in my head. I think it might have been yesterday. Kept thinking like, man, I'm really just so sick and tired of bad teammates in video games, and I was like, you know what, that's the perfect topic to talk about. And I wasn't sure I'd be able to have much to say on it, but oh, do I have lots to say on bad teammates in multiplayer games. Oh my gosh, especially, and this is very specifically to, random pickup groups. Man, I've wanted a team for Rocket League for a billion years. Geez, I could really use one because I'm really good at that game. And it's impossible for me to get better without a team. It's impossible because it's just, I'll get into that in a little bit. The reason I wanted to talk about this, what brought this up to my mind was, about a few days ago, maybe a week ago. I think it was actually, last week. I was ending my project at work. So we have projects at my job. I do customer support for video games. And some of the projects are longer than others. Like I might work on a certain game or games for a year. Might work on a certain game or games for a few months. So it just depends on how long they need me on these different projects. That's why they're called projects. I work for the same company, but they switch you around where needed and stuff. So my final week, there weren't many tickets to do, and they didn't really need me very much, but I was still scheduled, and I was still going to be getting paid to work. So I got assigned a couple things I'd never done before. And they were to write a guide. The first guide I was asked to write was actually for the tool that we use for the job. It's like an application, but you can use it on computer. They probably have a mobile version, but it's an app you use on your computer. And I was asked to write a guide for it, and I was like, that's weird. I'd never been asked to write a guide before, especially for work. I was like, I was a little worried about it, but at the same time, I was like, I was very familiar with the tool, so I was like, all right, that's no problem. I asked a couple questions to be clear on what exactly I was looking for. And I kicked ass at that guide. I did that guide and I was like, damn, even I was surprised by the kind of guide I made for it. It wasn't super long, but it was, I did it good, man. I was like, hells yeah. And then after that, he asked me to make a guide for one of their video games. This was High Res Studios. The first guide I did was for Rogue Company. And specifically, the guide he was asking for was not for players. Unfortunately, I was very sad about that. It was specifically for coworkers, support team members who may not be overly familiar with the game. Part of working with games, especially as customer support, generally speaking, you don't need to know very much about the game, which is sad and stupid. And as a player, you would want your customer support to know everything about the game. But the reality is, most of the things you need help with, you literally don't need the customer support to know about the game. That's only if you have very specific feedback or, questions about a certain hero type. And in that case, you should not be going to customer support for that kind of stuff. So stop it. So the guide specifically, at first, when he first asked me to do the guide, I wasn't even sure too, because my first thought was like, for players, really? Like, this is so cool. I'd never been assigned a project like this. So the first time I'd ever been assigned a project to write a guide was for the tool. And then he said for a game, and I was like, oh, damn. And I had to ask him a couple times, because the first time I asked him, I said, is this like a newbie guide, like a beginner's guide for players? And he said, yeah. And then the way he said it, though, he answered me in a way where I was like, I don't think he knows exactly what I mean. So I asked again. I had to be sure because it seemed like he meant customer support. So I made very sure, and he did clarify that it was for customer support team members. And the reason that mattered to me was because my initial thought was like, oh, hell's I've been wanting to tell noobs how not to be noobs for such a long time. So the main difference with the first guide I did was Rogue Company, though, which pretty familiar with the game, but I'm not an expert at it or anything, and I also not like super invested in it or anything. So I did do a very basic guide on that one for team support, but then what I loved, he was like, all right, I guess because I did it so quickly and I still had like a couple days left on my shift or whatever for the week. And he's like, all right, well, can you do another game guide? And I was like, okay. And then he said Smite. And I was like, ooh. I was like, ooh. And even for customer support, I don't like Smite. I don't like those types of MOBA games. That's just now, in my current mindset or whatever for gaming. I don't really like Smite. I don't hate Smite. I've tried it. There are a lot of things I do like about it, but it's just not my kind of thing. And I told him, I was like, dude, that's gonna take somebody like more that actually plays the game. Because I could easily write a beginner's guide for Smite, like easily. I could just come up with really stupid, basic, general gameplay things. But that game is pretty advanced. Like, Smite has a lot going on for it, and I didn't want to do some crappy guide for it, So I was like, I don't think I'm the right person for that. So he said, okay, well, what other games about high-res are there or whatever? And I told him, I wasn't sure this was what he was asking, but I told him, well, there's Paladins and there's Realm Royale. And I already knew, I'm a huge Realm Royale fan, but I already knew it's basically a dead game. So if he asked me to do a guide for it, actually my initial thought when I first told him this, I was like, Realm Royale and Paladins, I thought he would already know, but I wasn't sure. You never know with the team members. He might have known that it was a dead game, but I don't think he did. So he came back and he's like, all right, well, of the two, which one do you think would be a better guy to do for it? And I told him Paladins. I already knew that Realm Royale, like, I love Realm Royale, man, but it's, it doesn't have players, unfortunately. So, and the thing about Paladins, though, is I'm not very familiar with how large their player base is. Right now, Hi-Rez's best game is Rogue Company, by far. I remember I don't know, a while back, probably a few months or several months ago, I wrote an article when I first saw this news, was like, there was never any official news of Realm Royale being a dead game. Like, I was on the Discord server, and I still am, and people kept being hopeful about, like, updates and, all this and that, even though they could tell it was a small team working on the game. And then one day, like, somebody came across a reply to a tweet by the CEO of Hi-Rez, was just replying to somebody, and it was this letter. He shared, like, a screenshot of a letter to Realm Royale fans, basically saying, we're done, dude, sorry, it's gone. And I'm just putting it super simply. It was actually a really well-written letter, and it had a very detailed explanation, and it was cool. Like, it was very straight up and nice. I thought it was very formal, and it also let people know, look, like, we loved the game, but it didn't make us any money. Like, so for example, I forget, I wrote the article about it though when I first saw it, because I was like, damn, because I love that game, man. But basically, Rogue Company in its very first beta month, not even official launch date month, but its very first beta month, made more money than Realm Royale's entire lifetime. So, like, damn, that's crazy. That really sucks. Realm Royale is my most favorite battle royale game ever, so that was really sad to see that. So they were like, if we do any updates at all, there'd be very minor bug fixes, if that, so. What was really interesting about that was not like a month or two before I even came across that, they literally added like a new event mode to the game. Like, they called them limited time event modes, and those were actually really cool. Very cool new modes that they added to the game. And then so they must have already been working on that, I guess. I don't know. So anyways, I chose the Paladins guide instead of Realm Royale, and I wrote it up, and I would, like, when I first started writing it, I wasn't even expecting to write like a good guide. But I actually really do enjoy Paladins. I am very familiar with it. I'm no super professional at it, but I know it very well. There was a year where I played it pretty hardcore and even bought the season pass, the founders pack or whatever, for $40. I think this was on sale too. But I played it hardcore. That's why I bought that pass when it was on sale, because I was like, I was playing it just a ton, man. I was playing so much of it. So I wrote the guide, and I ended up having way more fun than I ever thought I would have writing that guide. And it's just a beginner's guide. Get first time players, and the way I wrote it too, I knew it was gonna be for coworkers and not like actual player guide. But I wrote it. I decided to just write it as if it was a beginner's guide for brand new players that had not played it, or looking for suggestions and stuff. And then I shared it on my blog, my website, because I liked the guide I made so much for work. I shared it on there, and I was thinking in my head too. I could have asked my team leader, but I was thinking in my head. I was like, because we have a lot of NDA stuff at the job, but I was like, there's nothing in that beginner guide I wrote would be secretive. So I was like, even though like my employer or coworkers could find out that was me that wrote that, I don't know, whatever. I'm not really too worried about that. I was like, screw it, I'm posting it on my site because I like the guide, man. I was like, hells yeah. And that was the best assignment I had ever gotten at this job. I think I'm going on like 7.5 years now. I usually just handle customer support tickets, and it's basically I was talking to my sister about this earlier in our personal podcast, and I was like, yeah, my job is basically 90% people could just search Google, and that's my job. That's literally my job. Just go on Google, man. Look that crap up. So it's kind of funny. Anyways, so that writing that actual guide, I was thinking about it, and then I've also getting a Rocket League. This is my most recent majorly dedicated multiplayer game that I'm like super into, and I've been into that game since day one, launch day. I think I don't know, we're probably going on 3 years now. I don't know. It feels like longer. I'm not really sure, but I've been there since day one. I have thousands of hours played on it. Like probably a minimum of 5,000 hours played on it. I don't remember. I lost track. And on PlayStation you can't really track it. I was like around 1,500 because I started on Steam. I think I started on Steam. I've played it on literally every console that it's on, all of them. But once I moved to PlayStation, I just stayed on PlayStation and played the crap out of it on there. I forget why I was getting into that. I know Rocket League is definitely a main reason why I want to talk about teamwork. But it's my main game if I do play like an online competitive game. Throughout the years I played all kinds of stuff. I remember at one point, Call of Duty Advanced Warfare was one of my most favorites, and it's still my most favorite multiplayer game in the Call of Duty series, because the multiplayer in that one was actually kind of unique in comparison to the rest of them. Even Ghosts had a couple really cool game modes that aren't in the rest of them. And they weren't very popular, so that's why I always think it's weird how like my most favorite game modes and my most favorite games are always like the least popular and stuff, and I'm just like, you bastards. But anyway, so teamwork, man, this is what's messed up, dude. Especially in pickup groups. I don't know why it is. I think mostly because my mentality nowadays, like, I mean, I'm sure when I was younger, I was probably different when I played multiplayer. Well, no. I imagine I was worse as a player starting out, in multiplayer. But I've always been team based. Like, that's just what I like. I like teamwork, man. I freaking love teamwork. So anytime I play any of these games, sometimes I have to switch that mentality off, and it's incredibly hard. Because I can't help it. Like, I want to play as a team. And so one of the things that's crazy about Rocket League that's really funny to me, and this happens to me like every match, man. I grinded out champion rank a couple years in a row, and after the second year, I can't even get into champion like at all. I'm just stuck in diamond now. I've just gone. The more players there are, the more horrible players there are. So, and then when it went to free to play, I was like, oh, son of a bitch, here we go. And there's gonna be even more jackasses coming in. But the messed up thing that I see, especially when it comes to teamwork, I hate this about it, because as teammates, they suck. Like there are so many players, like they're, we're getting into the top tier-ish, mid top tier, whatever, diamond nonsense. Like to me, that's nonsense. I should have been champion. I should have been grand champion so long ago. And it's not like, it's really not arrogance. I'm good, man. I'm not gonna, you know, I've played that game so much. It's like I said, I have at least 5,000 hours played on it. Like, um, and I don't like 1v1. I just don't like 1v1. That's why I don't play it. And I usually just play threes. And every game I've ever played, I like the biggest matches, except for Battlefield. Battlefield is just too much, man. It's too sloppy. Like the 40 versus 40, 60 versus 60. It's just so sloppy. And it's also a camp fest. I'm just like a... But the thing about the teamwork in Rocket League specifically, I'm sure this happens in other games as well. But I'm just incredibly familiar with Rocket League. The one thing I'll always notice is it's not that individual players are bad. They're just really shitty teammates. They don't know how to play as a team. They're so greedy. They're so selfish. It's like they're playing 1v5. It's just like, dude, you have a team. Like, what are you doing? Pass it, contest. Like, people are always trying to set themselves up for the most perfect shot rather than like a good pass or a good block. They're always just, I've got this all on my own all the time, man. It's freaking nuts. I'm gonna pause for a drink here. Excuse me, sorry. So, I don't know. I thought I would have more to say on that, but that's actually just the main thing I've always noticed about Rocket League. Because, I get so mad, dude. I'm just like, because I can see it too. I can see it, man. They're good at dribbling. They're really good at air dribbling as well. They can do trick shots. It's just like, damn, that's pretty cool. It's too bad you're a really shitty teammate. Like every time, every damn time, man. It's like, come on. I'm telling you, I don't understand it. And then of course you'll have these players. It doesn't happen all the time, but then there's the scoreboard arguments, which literally when I'm spending 90% of my own of the match, where my own teammates are constantly jumping over my head. They're behind me and they're jumping over my head to beat me to the ball when I have a very clear, open, plenty of time. I've got this, like it's all mine, and then all of a sudden someone comes out of nowhere just taking the ball from me, and I'm just like, and that's just one of the small things. It's just a bunch of nonsense. Usually, I don't. It just depends, right? Like, it's just the way your team plays and everything. Like, sometimes you'll be on the bottom of the scoreboard as far as hits on the ball or assists or whatever. And the main reason for that is because you literally can't do anything because your teammates are just douchebags. That's why. And then they'll be like, "Oh, look at you on the bottom of the scoreboard." It's like, you freaking idiot. Like, it really pisses me off when teammates don't recognize who the bad player is. Like, it's pretty damn obvious. I don't know, maybe they just have less hours played on it. I don't really, it never makes sense to me. I'm like, how the hell did you get to this rank in the first place? Like, you're such a douche. Like, you are such a horrible player. And, that's such a generalization. And a lot of them are. I mean, you can, when you have as many hours played as I have, it is easier to tell when someone is carried and when someone is a good player but a bad teammate. Because it's like I said, those are two different things, and they are noticeable. Like, I can watch these players play, and I see what they do, and I see how they play, and I'm like, damn, I wish they were a good teammate, because, dude, we would kick so much ass. And they're just not. It's greed and selfishness, man. And, I think, it's definitely different in other games, like Paladins. I actually got, it's funny, I got back into that game recently because of the guide I wrote. I was like, you know what? Because I've had that game installed for quite a while, and every time I thought about uninstalling, I was like, it's only like 20 gigs. Screw it. I'll just uninstall a larger game if I need to. Because I always feel like if I'm ever in the mood, I'm gonna play that, because I actually like Paladins a lot. And it's a bit different. It's definitely a different game, and the more players you have, you can kind of, like, for example, in a 5 versus 5 game, you can kind of carry one of those players. Like, if your team is really good, and if 4 of your team members out of the 5 are really good, that useless player can be carried. But every one of those 4 players has to be good. If you have 3 good players and 2 crappy players, then it's just not going to happen. Like it's unless the other team is also bad, you know, like basically it's going to come down to which team has the most good players, you know. It's just a trip. As always, especially in a game like that where it's very objective focused. They do have a team deathmatch mode, but the main game mode of that is the siege mode, which is kind of like Overwatch's mode. I don't remember what Overwatch's game mode is called, the main competitive one. But it's like that. You go to the first objective point, and it's either defended or attacked, and then if the attacking team caps it, then they escort a vehicle to the final point to win the match, and then it's round based and all that. So the thing about that is that game has, I mean, it's very similar to Overwatch. I talk more about Paladins specifically, personally, because I've played more Paladins than I played Overwatch, and I do own Overwatch, and I have played a bit of it. I probably have like at least 100 hours on it, but I have probably a couple hundred or more on Paladins played. I think it's just preference, really. Kind of like the classes more and the heroes more. The only thing I wish Paladins had that Overwatch had is being able to switch heroes during a match. That'd be so much. That's one of my least favorite things about MOBA games, man. And you lock in a character and then you're just stuck with it. And I'm just like, and I understand like a lot of arguments for balance and all that, but I just don't care. Like, I'm just like, dude, just change it, man. Just update the game and stop this nonsense. But that's kind of like League of Legends and games like that. I'm just like, I don't want to. Especially like those are. I mean, it's not the only reason, but a big reason I hate that is especially as a new player. Like, these matches are at minimum usually on average 15 to 20 minutes. So as a new player, you're stuck, you're screwed. If in the first few minutes you're trying your character out and you're like, you know what, I don't like this character. It's not what I thought it was going to be when I read the descriptions of the abilities. It's not what I thought it was going to be when I read just the description of the character. And then you go in there and you're stuck with it, and you immediately see how much you hate it. It sucks. It's like, damn, dude. And then also part of that, makes it so that you can't have drop in, drop out players. And some of the arguments I get for that too, where there's this purchase system specifically in Paladins and League of Legends. I'm pretty sure Overwatch does not have that, yeah. And that's why these other games have lockouts or whatever. So if a player gets disconnected, another player won't take over for them. And I remember when I first talked about this, and I was like, dude, that's kind of dumb. That kind of sucks. And they're like, well, they bought upgrades, and then if the player joins and they don't like the upgrades, but I was like, well, I mean, so I sort of understand that. Like, that's actually a pretty fair argument, but I think what they could do is just, hey, if a player disconnects and someone takes their place, give them the money back, refund the money. Like, like, why can't you just do that? Refund the upgrades when they come in and they can select a new character. So I do understand the balance arguments. I just don't agree with them. I think it makes far more sense to just let people drop in and drop out. But I guess, for me, the only argument that would work is just, and makes sense, would be is if you have a pre-made team. If every single player that played that game had pre-made teams, it would be such a different thing. But that's not the reality. I would bet 90% of these players in these games are, pickup groups, probably, right? I mean, that's how most of these games are. Anyways, I'm sitting here recording this, and I'm just looking at the time, and I'm like, I thought I had a lot more to say. I was really not much to it other than just, I don't understand why players don't work together. And it reminds me of all the Call of Duty games, and it's funny because whenever I would play Call of Duty, and this was eventually, I've never really liked Team Deathmatch or even Deathmatch. I've played those kind of game modes in the past, and I've enjoyed them when I was in the mood, but most of my most favorite thing is teamwork. Capture the flag. That's my favorite game mode. I love capture the flag. Domination, love hardpoint, love game modes like that. My favorite game mode in Call of Duty Advanced Warfare was what the hell is it called? It started with a U. It's been quite a while, and it was the only game that had that game mode. Or oh wait, no, I forgot they did put it in another one. Uplink. I really liked Uplink. It's basically a different version of Capture the Flag, and I thought that game mode was super cool. So the thing about those game modes, you get in there and there is an objective, but you'll most matches you end up in, I don't know if I'm just like the unluckiest person on the planet, and I don't think so because I've seen other people go through the same thing, but I'm just like, why is it 9 out of 10 matches I end up in, none of my team cares about the objective? It's just insane, man. So you got this game mode, this objective, and everybody's just running around trying to get kills. They're playing it like it's team deathmatch, and I'm like, you son of a bitch. And I'm sure you know it too, because you play those domination matches and those hardpoint matches where your team literally has 0 points. You got like 1 or 2 players on your team has like 30 to 40 kills, but your team as an objective has 0 points, and the other team just destroys you in a minute or two. It's just like, okay, game over, good job, idiots. Like, way to go for the objective. Oh my gosh, it's freaking annoying. I'm gonna have a drink again. And I guess one of the games I was thinking about, this was like right before I started this podcast recording. It's a game called Brink. Now, you know what's funny about this? I'm getting into this other stuff. One of the biggest reasons I wanted to talk about teamwork and multiplayer specifically with Rocket League, because I could spend a year just complaining about again, it's funny, I would say bad players, but like I said, it's more so that they're just bad teammates, not bad players, and it's infuriating, man. And I'm just like, dude, if you would just work with me instead of against me, but Brink is still, to this day, especially when it comes to first-person shooters, or was that third person? I don't think, was it? Crap. Damn, it's been so long. I think it was actually a third person. I think he might have been able to switch. I forget. But it was my favorite shooter multiplayer game. I will never forget it. And it's still the only game I ever played like it. And the main reason is that I think part of it is kind of this mentality too, is like I said, when you do with pickup groups, even when you play objective modes, like, people are just in it for themselves. And it's the same thing with Rocket League. Did mention that a little bit, like how player could be good, but it's 1v5, because they're playing just for themselves. They don't even play with their 2 teammates. But Brink was special. Like, it was designed for teams. It was designed only for objectives. And I think that's the biggest reason why it didn't grow popular. That's my opinion. That's how I see it. Because, having played these games for years and having seen how people treat objective modes in every single one of these games, like I said, like 9 out of 10 times, your team will not work for the objective. Those game modes, those matches where my team is actually really good at the objective, oh, it's such a nice time, especially when both teams actually go for the objectives, and you're like this 50-50, and you're struggling and you're fighting, and it's such a close match. Those are the best matches, man. They're so good. And I mean the good ones. I don't mean the ones where both teams are struggling to win because they both suck. Because there's that too. There's that as well. It's where both teams suck and everybody's just stupid, and it's still a close match. I mean the good matches. I mean the ones where you can tell both teams are really good, and they're going at it, man. Like, that's the sweet spot. I wish every match was like that. Those are the most fun to me. So Brink was, what an amazing game that was, man. It was, you kind of, in a sense, I always think of it as dynamic objectives. It really wasn't, though. It's more like stages. Something like Overwatch or Paladins, except they had more than 2, right? Like in Overwatch and Paladins, you capture a point and then you escort the vehicle and then it's over. I think Brink had 3 objectives for each game map. I think, if I remember right. I even think they had, like, it's been so long, but I think it depended on the mode, depended on the map. But I think even in that one, there were times, it might have been a mode and it might have been a map. I can't remember. It has been a while. But there would be 2 objectives at once. Not like domination, though. You had one where you had you had to split your team. You would capture one thing and escort another at the same time. There were just different objective types each time. And then another cool thing on top of that was there was actually kind of in a Titanfall sense before Titanfall existed. Kind of had that story in the multiplayer mode. You know, they had these interactions with the characters and different little, like, they gave you real objectives, you know, like why you're doing this, why you're doing this objective and then moving to that objective. And it was just so freaking cool, man. I was I wish that game was more popular. I mean, it had like its loyal niche fan base. It was very small. I mean, I think right now there's probably like 30 players. Like, the last I looked was like a year ago, but I was surprised, like, cause like about a year ago, before COVID, I remember seeing people on the forums, very small group, and a very dedicated group that were actually still, you know, scheduling matches. I was like, holy crap. So that was cool. I was like, damn, and it really made me want to get into it. But I just, not only am I I don't really play PC anymore as much, and I'm, especially when it comes to shooters, I've got far more used to the controller in the past, I don't know, few or several years now that I moved to PlayStation and stuff. So, you know, when you do that, there is a transition, and it takes quite a bit of time to get used to the keyboard and mouse compared to the controller. I remember, I remember that because the first time I really truly moved to PC, it was the same thing. Like, I was a console gamer. That's where I started. You know, Atari and Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Genesis, Sega CD. I never personally got the 3DO and the Jaguar and those ones. I played them at friends' houses and stuff. The Saturn. I think I had the Super Nintendo and Genesis, and then my next console was the PlayStation 1. Anyways, when I like, might have been PlayStation. When I first moved to PC, it was like really hard to get used to the keyboard and mouse. Specifically, I think it was just specifically for shooters. I can't remember exactly, because I remember even Diablo was kind of weird. Like when I first started playing Diablo. Well, actually, I can't remember. I know something gave me a hard time. It was probably a shooter though. It was probably like something like CS:GO or something. Because I did play computer games, but only at friends' houses. So I had played like a ton of Diablo 1 at a friend's house, played a ton of Heroes of Might and Magic. So I was used to a mouse, you know, and playing with a mouse and stuff. But there was something when I first got my own computer and started playing like all games on my computer. I definitely had to get used to certain games with the mouse and keyboard. And I played on PC for like 20 years. Over, you know, 20 to 23 years. I've never really gone out of my way to count it. I'm sure I could. I just don't care. But it was, you know, it's 20 years. And then when I finally went back to console, oh my, especially first-person shooter. Now, again, like, I think it's definitely easier to move between the two platforms if you're not playing a competitive shooter. You know, it's really not that hard to move from Diablo on PC to Diablo on console. There might be some annoyances or, you know, whatever, but it's not hard to switch, you know. It's like, oh, I can't do this, but it's not that big of a deal. You just, you know, it's just a different play style. But competitive shooter, though, just the aiming alone is such a huge different change, man. It's nuts. Like, I literally, I hated it, man. I hated when I moved to PlayStation 4 and Xbox, and because I was playing originally Call of Duty Advanced Warfare on PC. And man, the very first thing I noticed was I could not strafe and shoot and dodge on controller. That was the very first thing I noticed. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. It took me months I had to figure out a new play style on the controller, and I still don't like it. Like, I still would rather, in my mind, I know I would prefer to play on a mouse and keyboard, but just comfort-wise, I just prefer to just sit back in my chair and have the controller in my hand, man. So, you know, there's definitely a lot of practice in that too. Pain in the butt, man. Yeah, it really sucked. Just specifically in first-person shooters on console, you know, the strafing is so much easier in a keyboard. A and D, just tap, 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 tap. You're dodging. You know, hip fire is so much easier with a mouse, especially because it's far easier on a mouse to control the recoil. Way easier. I mean, I was a master SMG player on PC. SMG was my shit, man. That's my favorite guns, you know. And then I played on controller, and I started getting into all kinds of other guns. Started trying everything, getting used to aim assist, getting used to just not being able to strafe and dodge so easily. Because oh, it's so gross. One thing that's interesting about that it's it took years for me. I finally got around to playing Doom. This was the 2014 Doom, and I had been playing shooters on console for a while before I got around to playing that finally. And I love the Doom multiplayer. Oh my gosh, I love multiplayer in Doom. I remember when I first played the beta for multiplayer on Doom on PC. That was where I first tried it out. I was not impressed. I also hadn't played a game like that in such a long time. I was so used to Call of Duty crap, and oh my gosh, I hate Call of Duty. I mostly just hate the time to kill. It's so gross, dude. Even Titanfall, I really think Titanfall 1 is so much better than 2, but even both those games, the time to kill is just too short. I think that's correct. You die too fast. But I was so used to those types of games that when I first tried Doom, and the beta too, it was the beta, and it was also PC, and I think I had already kind of been transitioning to console, so I didn't really care too much to try it that much on PC. But I gave it a try because they just had the beta. I was like, all right. And it was very weird to get used to. It was so weird, the whole health thing. Even Halo kind of has like a larger health pool, which is cool. You've got the shield and the health, but even that is far quicker than Doom specifically. And of course, it depends on the gun type and that kind of thing, headshots and all that. But I will never forget Doom multiplayer, the Doom 2014. I still have yet to try Doom Eternal's multiplayer. But the first thing I noticed on Doom, man, on controller, and this was after I'd been used to it and played. At this point when I played Doom on PS4, I was really used to the controller now, and the very first thing I noticed was how smooth the strafing was. I was blown away. I was like, why don't other games do this? Like, you literally glide. You just glide, man. I was like, damn. And I don't think I noticed it like in my first second. I had to get used to playing the game. And I don't think I realized it right away. I do remember being like, oh, I'm getting a whole lot more kills in this game than I do in Call of Duty and stuff. And then after a little while, like I remember there was a point where I realized I was like, oh, the controls are so much better. Like and it's still right now the best shooter I've ever played on a controller, specifically in relation to strafing, dodging for multiplayer, because it's just so much. You just glide. When you use the analog stick left and right. Every other game, I have yet to play another game on the controller where strafing left and right on the analog stick is so smooth. And that doesn't mean they're bad or anything. Like, I don't hate the other games, but they come nowhere close to Doom. Like, the controls on Doom on controller are insane. It's just like, okay, this is nice. Like, I remember years ago, I had got these thumbsticks for my controller, my PS4, especially after having played Call of Duty when I moved back to console from PC for Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. That was my first issue, was getting used to the joysticks. And I remember I had seen for years too, I kept seeing these control freak things, these thumbsticks called control freaks, and I'd heard about them and I'd never tried them before. And there was a point where I was just so frustrated, and I was like, dude, one day I was like, all right, I'll just try these. I'll try them. It can't be as good as they say they are. I tried them, and while they're not perfect, they were a drastic change. Like, I'll never forget my first time trying to control freak thumbsticks on a controller. I was like, wow, that's actually game changing, specifically for a competitive first person shooter game. They're cool for other games. They work great. They're fine. But that's actually what they were designed for. They were designed specifically for more control on guiding your thumbsticks in a first-person shooter game. So it's still definitely nowhere even close to, keyboard and mouse. Nowhere close at all. But still, for a controller, though, like, immediately noticeable improvement. Like, right away. But I still think Doom is so much better when it comes to general basic controls. I'm gonna have another drink here. That's my sister. She's just been hanging out with me today. I was having a really bad day. Really bad day. incredibly, deeply horrible. For no specific reason, just so you know. Anyways, yeah. So I mean, I definitely, I ended up talking about that stuff, the controls, Doom. Man, I wish more first-person shooter games controlled like Doom. I really do. I really do. It's so smooth, man. And I don't know if it's specific to PS4. I imagine it's the same, just on controller. It's just the way I don't know. I haven't tried it on each platform, but I imagine it is the same. I imagine it was designed that way, and that's why it feels so freaking good, dude. I'm telling you, man, like it is such a noticeable difference. And again, like what's really funny about that to me is because I didn't notice it right away. I could tell. I remember that I was like, I'm playing better in this game. And I wasn't like some super pro. I wasn't getting like all the kills in the match or anything. I remember when I first started playing Doom multiplayer, specifically on my PS4, I was like, and this, I had played everything else. I spent a lot of time playing Call of Duty and other games on my controllers. And then when I played Doom, I was like, on the other games, I was like a decent noob, nothing compared to PC. I was awesome on PC. I wouldn't call myself the best player or anything on PC, but I was kicking ass. I was definitely one of the top players usually, you know, usually. And that's not trying to brag. I'm just saying that the difference between switching to PC and console was huge. It was huge, man. It literally took me months to get used to the controller, specifically in Call of Duty. So I remember when I noticed I was doing decent in Doom, I was like, "What's so different about this?" I didn't notice it right away. I didn't realize it was because it was so easy to strafe, so easy to dodge, so easy to move around, and that strafing thing it's very specifically the strafing left and right. And the funny thing about that is I remember I returned to that game like a couple months ago, maybe a few months ago. Time is weird. It could have been a year ago, but I returned to it, and I remember I was, you get used to a certain playstyle on controller. Like this is what I was saying. Like when I switched from PC to controller, I literally had to change my playstyle. I even stopped using SMGs as much. I had to figure out different guns to use because the controller is so different, and it sucks. It sucked so bad. I was miserable, man. I was miserable when I was figuring that out. It was horrible. Because the difference between a controller and PC mouse keyboard is on PC mouse and keyboard you could literally pick any gun and be good with it, and I mean you could probably say the same for controller, but when you're so used to PC, it's like I said, there's an enormous difference between the recoil on an SMG on the mouse than controller. It is not the same thing. It can't be. It's impossible to be the same thing. So it was just this huge learning process switching back to the controller, man. I'm so mad. I'll never get over that. It's like, anyways. Yeah, so one of the things I also like about Doom, other than the controls, is the larger health pool. I am, dude, I don't know what it is. It's got to be a personal preference. I don't know why people like it so much. I hate 1 to 2 shot kills. I hate them. They're so boring. You cannot have a gunfight and a 1 to 2 shot kill. It's impossible. There's no such thing as a gunfight. It's literally whoever sees who first and pulls the trigger first. It's just nonsense. And that does change a little bit with guns, but I mean, even then, I mean, in these most of these games, that's just how it is. It's just poof dead instantly. It's so boring. It's so damn boring. Oh, and I remember I was playing Halo on Xbox for a little bit. I prefer story in that game specifically. The multiplayer is it's just not my thing, which is kind of weird because it does offer, I mean, I would rather play Halo than Call of Duty, but only because the health. That's it. Like I actually prefer map design. Well, never mind. I hate the laned map design. I mean, that was actually the reason Advanced Warfare was my favorite multiplayer Call of Duty, was because it was so easy to flank. There was so much freedom for the maps because it had the lanes, but you also had so much freedom to flank, and that was because of the double boost, the double jump, and the boost and the movement. Like, it was so good. The map design was so damn good, and then they added the grapple later for DLC, and that wasn't necessary or anything, but it was fun. The maps were designed far more open than any other Call of Duty I played. And of course, I don't remember a lot of the earlier Call of Duties. I can remember, like, specifically from like Black Ops 1 through now, basically. And all those maps in those games are very laned. Black Ops 1 is probably in comparison to the newer ones since then, a little bit more open, I guess, but I wouldn't even, it was definitely a laned, game, and I hate that left, right, and middle stuff. It's actually why I hated Titanfall 2. This is my biggest reason I hated Titanfall 2's multiplayer compared to Part 1. Like, 1 was incredible. I had never felt more free in a multiplayer shooter game than Titanfall 1. Not ever, especially on a mouse and keyboard. And that did change as well on a controller. When I was playing on the Xbox and PS4, I was like, damn it, man. Strafing not as easy on it, and then just other stuff. But as far as the map design, Titanfall 1, absolutely mind-blowing, incredible. Just beautiful. So perfect, especially for the parkour, man. And the one thing that I always thought was cool about the parkour in Titanfall was how natural it was. How easy it was. Like, it literally took no effort to glide in that game as far as the parkour, especially on a mouse and keyboard. Because Titanfall had the same strafing issue. Like I said, I have never played a first-person shooter on console on a controller as good as Doom. Not a single one even comes close to the strafing gliding effect that they had in Doom. But as far as the parkour freedom in Titanfall 1 is just amazing, and the maps were perfect. You could practically go from one side of the map to the other side of the map all through the air. Like, it was incredible. And of course, some maps were designed for it a little bit better than others, but you could pretty much do that though. And then Titanfall 2, I will never forget how pissed off and upset and frustrated I was with that, because they laned it up. I would say it's more open than a Call of Duty game, your average Call of Duty game, but they laned it up. They blocked so much stuff off, forcing you through tunnels, and it was gross, just in comparison to Part 1. And that's what's funny to me, and it's, the majority of the internet preferred Part 2 over Part 1, and we're talking specifically multiplayer, not just because the campaign was really good. The campaign in Part 2 was really cool. But no, if we're just talking multiplayer only versus multiplayer, the internet likes 2 a whole lot more. And I'm just like, no, dude, no. No way, man. You bastard. I've talked about this before. I disagree with everybody on everything. It's just weird. Like, I'm not trying to, it's kind of funny. But man, yeah, so I guess got into hybrid on this conversation here, or whatever topic, from teamwork multiplayer to controls in a first person shooter game kind of a thing. Pretty neat. I'm trying to think if I can finish this off with something. I'm a little bit short of an hour, which is fine. But I think that's it. I don't know. Because I know that when I first had this idea in my head to talk about teamwork, that I probably had a whole lot more thoughts in my head rolling at the time. That's kind of why it depends. When I was thinking about this, I just thought it was a cool idea, and it's just a weird thing how I am. I get these ideas in my head, even conversations in my head. Like, I literally have conversations in my head with myself, and I've started to get into the habit of writing them down. That's actually how I started writing my reviews. I started taking notes whenever I would think about things that I want to say, and that can take me quite a long time. It could take me a week to 2 weeks of different notes that I finally put together, because my brain is all over the place. So for example, if I go to the bathroom, I could have like 100,000 thoughts pop into my head and be like, oh man, I love all this stuff. I can't wait to go back in my room and just write it all. And I'll forget before I even leave the bathroom. I'll forget like every single thought I had. I'm just like, damn it, man. Well, there goes that. Yeah, it's pretty rough, man. It's pretty crazy. Um, I think I'm gonna leave it here though. I think I'm gonna end it here because right this second I can't think of anything more to add. But it was fun. That was cool. Thank you very much for listening. Try to get if you ever get a friend that you're close with, that you play with personally, or a nephew, a cousin, a younger sibling that's playing video games. I ask you a favor, even if you're a parent, actually, please do myself and other video gamers a huge favor and teach your damn kid teamwork. Freaking hell, man. Oh my gosh, it's insane. Like, why is it so hard to work as a team? So, but try to, and again, there's a difference between being put. Just let people know, look, there's an objective, man. There's a point. Like, stop going off on yourself. Stop going off on your own. Like, work with your team. You gotta, damn it. Anyways, all right. I will talk to you later. Bye bye. Take care.